Welcome to Traces of Trauma, where we explore the quiet echoes that trauma leaves behind and the gentle path of healing. I'm your host, Brian Arbor, inviting you to join me in conversations that honor our stories, our struggles, and the strength and grace it takes to move forward. This is a safe space to listen, reflect, and connect in the shared journey beyond our trauma. Cue some really cool music that we don't have yet because this is our first episode. Hi, thanks for joining us today. And with me is Jennie Bellinger, a very good friend and longtime top podcaster. So I figured for our launch episode, rather than me droning on about my stuff, I would have her here to kind of walk this through in a conversation type style. So it's less boring for you and for me. So, Jennie, thanks for joining me to do this today. Anything you want to say to introduce yourself or say hello?
I am so happy to be here to support you through this. I think what you're creating with this, based on the conversations we've had, this is a really important podcast that many people are going to find extremely helpful. So I'm honored to be able to help support launching this and getting it out there for the world.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ah. So, what do you say we get started with talking about some of this?
Yeah, great.
Okay, good. So, I know a few parts of your story, right? You and I have been friends for a while, but we haven't always dug into all of the deep stuff because most of our conversations have been more on the business surface level with occasional digs into the personal life from time to time. But what I want to know is what is it that you want to share with your audience that they need to know about you as the host of the show? What's your story?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so my exposure to trauma um, comes on many different levels at many different stages throughout life. And where I really started digging into this journey from is post-combat as an Army veteran. I spent 20-ish years in personal development and transformational models for dealing, coping, reframing, and basically choosing the life I want to live versus the one that seems ready and waiting in the wings as a result of the stuff I've been through. And it wasn't until I approached the VA and said, I'm tired. I'm tired of having to manage my mind constantly all day long. I'm tired of spending all my energy points for the day getting up and getting going in the face of how I feel and faking it so good that nobody knows I'm not this bright, shiny, empowered, happy-go-lucky guy.
Mm,
Like putting on a persona so that I can have a life that I'm interested in rather than actually like having that internal stuff dissipate so there's room for me to have that naturally.
yeah.
Um, and all the all the conflict and trauma and stuff made me, I mean, I've got anger, but more it made me soft and careful and kind. And the more I look into the what it takes to actually reduce the presence of trauma, like physically and mentally rather than intellectually,
Mhm.
um, the more I realize it's a challenge for me to be kind to myself in this process. And it feels so personal, like that I'm alone doing this work over here that no one can see. And it's tiring and it's messy. and,
Yeah.
and I don't like being alone in this space. I struggle to complete my homework assignments. I'd procrastinate and put it off and then knock it out right before my therapy appointment. Like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And as I started really engaging in my therapy process and my homework assignments and my stuff and started writing on my own about it and started sharing with coworkers and friends and family about kind of how it's going, I just kept hearing back that they had stuff that they were dealing with or that they hadn't dealt with, but they had similar stories and could relate. And even though it's so deeply personal, I'm not alone in going through these spaces. And I don't think there's really I haven't found a good place to talk about this. I haven't found a good forum or like a safe environment for exploring these kinds of conversations with other people. Um,
Hmm.
and in the absence of what I feel like I need and want being handed to me, ready and available,
Yeah.
I'm here creating it.
And I think that's incredibly powerful, right? Because the people who will listen to this and say, me too. And my guess is they probably also don't have the reason that they're here and listening is because they also don't have that safe place to talk, that safe place to, you know, share about these things because, y- most people aren't willing to open up such a soft, vulnerable part of themselves to the rest of the world, to maybe even their friends and family, because quite possibly they're just like you. They are masking what is going on. They're covering, putting on the mask to go out into the world,
Yeah.
and I
And,
think that's
you know,
so good.
I could trust my mom. I could trust my partner. I could talk to my brothers. I have friends that I don't doubt the safety of having the conversation with them, but I
Right.
also don't want the lingering impact. Like, I don't want to deal with their starting to treat me like they need to be careful with me in ways that they don't. I don't want to have a chat with my mom about military trauma and leave her messed up, even though I know she's a safe enough space that I could talk to her about anything. There's
Yeah.
like, how do we process this kind of stuff without having it taint all the places in our life where we've managed to keep the trauma from fucking it up so far? Because the trauma fucks
Yeah.
stuff up all the time. And I don't want to mess up what's working
Right.
by like bringing this into those spaces, you know?
Yeah. And I think by having a separate place where this can be talked about, where people can, and especially where, because you're going to have other people come on to the show to be able to share their experiences and what they've found to be useful and helpful, and so you can dig into those kinds of things. I think that's beneficial because that allows you, because you've processed it here on the side,
Hmm.
right here in the podcast piece. It means you can go to those other places, whether it's work, family events, whatever, and be able to show up in that person who has processed,
Yeah. I want
right?
to show up better in my life,
Yeah.
um, without getting the mess all over everybody else in my life.
Yeah. And I would put this out there for you to know that because you've shared some things with me, and you are welcome to share what you want here. I'm never going to tell
Yeah.
somebody else's story, right? Um I will tell you, as someone who has heard some parts of your story, to me, it never felt like a mess.
Hmm.
It didn't feel like I was being dumped on. It didn't feel like whatever. Now, I'm also in a different space than most other people, so I can't speak for all the other people in your life. But what
Right.
I can say is, when there's someone like me who can hold space, to me, I felt honored that you felt like you could share those things with me,
Hmm.
those parts of your story, And I mean, I don't know how you felt about it, but I never want anyone to feel judged about anything that they share with me. But the ability to receive that part of your story never felt like a burden,
Hmm.
you know? And I think that's an important part of the processing process
Yeah.
is learning that A, who you can share with, what can be shared, but what feels like a burden to you, shared with other people. Hopefully you felt lighter after sharing with me.
Yeah. And it's good to hear that it's a fear
Yeah.
that what I've opened up and shared is gonna color someone's view forever. Like you can't take back what you share with someone once it's shared, it's out there. And so there's so much, probably more fear and caution about the impact of opening up than really needs to be there.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and again, this feeds into the reframing piece that you already talked about, right? Which is, keep in mind that there are people like me out there who see those pieces, hear those parts of the story, and now see you as a more whole person
hmm,
with it, I- my mentor calls them facet truths,
hmm,
right? So now there's more facets to you, right? I think that makes for a more interesting human being to be able to have those kinds of conversations instead of all of the shallow, normal, like, so what's going on in your life? How, like, yes, it's good stuff to know. And yes, I do honestly want to know it, but I also love knowing the other sides of humans that make them a whole ass person,
yeah.
you know? So I think that's good. So from this, I mean, you kind of really touched on some of the things. And I know that through the episodes, you'll go deeper into different parts of this moving forward with people. Um, but you really, from all of this, what made you transition from wanting to have a safe space? Because a safe space to talk about trauma could happen anywhere. Why a podcast?
Um, I this is gonna sound so crazy. I'm shy. Like,
Okay.
I'm not sure who wants this. I'm not sure who has the bandwidth for this kind of conversation. And rather than spending my energy trying to chase down the perfect accountability buddy, the perfect listener, or a whole community of people that I can lean upon and who can lean upon me, I'm just kind of throwing it out to the universe so that
Mm,
who needs this finds it, and who's
yeah.
inspired by my journey takes another step in their own and maybe shares this as a resource with someone they know is struggling, or tunes in just to get a better understanding of what it's like to be over in my shoes when they're not in my shoes. So there are
Yeah.
people dealing with trauma, there are people struggling to understand their loved ones who are dealing with complex PTSD from, like, and that happens outside of the military. It happens outside of, like,
Mm,
people wind up with, like, um they're sneaky. It's like nuanced, sneaky trauma responses that creep out into our life that we
yeah.
don't think have anything to do with trauma. And the deeper I go down this rabbit hole of actual trauma and, like, brain patterning and the impacts and the lasting changes that happen, the
Mhm.
more I have the more I have a chance to be compassionate with myself and to understand that it's not like I'm not broken.
Mhm.
I'm like I'm impacted
Yeah.
by the stuff that happened. And
Yeah.
it takes recognizing that impact without internal violence and rejection and judgment to be able to like gently like scoop that gnarly thing up and put it outside so it doesn't live in my house anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I love that. And I think what I want to point out to you, what jumped out at me from what you just said, and I think is hopefully something because I had a literal gut reaction to what you said, which is I'm not broken, I'm impacted. Letting people like if it didn't hit people before, hopefully they're recognizing now how important that statement is because here's the thing. I don't know how other people translate broken, okay? But my definition is if you're still here, if you're still plodding along in life, okay? Regardless at what speed at which you are moving forward, but you are still here and you are still alive, you're not broken, right? It's you know, people don't know this about me if they're listening to this because they probably have no idea who I am. I'm a business coach by trade. So when I talk to people about entrepreneurial endeavors, the only way somebody fails in business is if they quit. The only way to fail is to quit. That's it, right? A business may have gone bankrupt, but there's lots of businesses that have gone bankrupt that came back from it, right? They didn't fail. They just had an interesting side quest. Right. And so I think to bring this back to that conversation of, if you're still here, whatever happened to you didn't break you. It probably felt like being broken, but you're still here. You're still hanging on. And that's an important thing. The thing that happened, or the things, because you're right, most of us have multiple things that have happened over life that are impacting us, right? And have formed a trauma, right? If we're still here, we were impacted, not broken. I think that's huge. Huge. Oh my gosh. So the podcast then becomes this way for you to, it sounds to me like, share your story, share the stories of others who you'll be talking to
Mhm.
for this in order to help those who stumble upon, find your show.
Yeah. It's sometimes it helps I say things out loud in a conversation that I wouldn't write in my journal, that
Mhm.
I wouldn't think of to share in a therapy session. Um, like in this conversation, I've said things that they weren't in my brainstorming or my outline. And
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm speaking to someone else, I hear the thing I need to hear come out of my mouth, but I couldn't say it to me. And then
Mm.
I have the chance to true up to the compassion I have for someone else and to turn that inward. Um, I hope to connect with professionals in the industry and have conversations about tools and resources that are available and how trauma impacts us and what we can do about it. Um, and to like have those resources like reach people they might not have otherwise reached. Um, I'm I'm like now obsessed with like audiobooks on trauma and cognitive like behavioral issues. And when
Mhm.
I mow the lawn, I put in my AirPods with the noise canceling and I'm listening to audiobooks on trauma and survival. And it's exciting instead of burdensome.
Mm.
Like I'm finding this research and study giving me life rather
Yeah.
than being an endless burden, like rolling that stone up the hill, right?
Yeah.
And if what I'm going through and if what I discover can help someone else not have to repeat the steps I've taken, like if my journey can make someone else's journey easier, I want that.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Because I think uh yeah, it can be overwhelming to think of all the books that are out there, right? I mean, there are more books published per day now than there used to be in the Great Library of Alexandria. I heard that statistic recently. So my guess is there's a lot of different books that people could be seeking out. And so by having something like this where you've already done some of the work to find, oh, this was one that was helpful for me, or I was listening to this book and wow, this was a really powerful thing for me that I wanted to share with you guys. I think that's wonderful for people to be able to access that. And I think the great thing, and I will share this as somebody who's been podcasting for 6 years at this point, one of the great benefits of being a podcast host is when you find a book that you love and you're like, oh, that's amazing. The great thing about having a show is you can reach out to the author and be like, would you come talk on my podcast about that? And do you know what? A lot of the times they say yes. It's so cool. So you get the opportunity to be like, "Yeah, I was listening to that book or I was reading your book and I had this question pop up and now I want to ask you about that," right? So it's this really phenomenal platform through which you can reach amazing human beings to get more of that message out. Because I'm sure if they wrote a book, they want to get the message out, you know? So this now moves us into then who else will be featured? So, experts, authors, what other people, what are content do you think will end up? Because obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think might show up on the show?
Yeah, as I was brainstorming and hesitating and overthinking and analyzing to death whether or not I had what it took to do this, um, I my friends started coming out of the woodwork. Like, oh,
Mm,
I'd love to have that conversation on a podcast. Oh, I'd love to talk to you about. I have a friend who was in physical therapy and occupational therapy. She was a therapist, and she's like all into the science of like how pathways are formed and like how healing occurs. And she's like, oh, that would be amazing. I'd love, and she loves me. She'd love to show up on the show. I was sharing with a coworker at Starbucks, and I happened to know some of her history, and she's like, I'd come on that show and share my story. And I was like, whoa, like goosebumps, even again right now, right? Um,
yeah.
I was having lunch with an old friend and just mentioned that I'm on the cusp of launching this thing. And we ended up spending our entire lunch talking about the traumas that are hidden, that
Mm,
like shape who we are and the way we interact with people and the quality of our relationships and the stuff that just lingers, even though the incident is long dead and gone, and like it's not re-triggering to think about it or talk about it, but the impact still echoes. And so it started out like, wouldn't it be cool to have these conversations? But all around me was, oh my God, please do that.
mm,
So, there are people from my life, there are people I haven't met yet who may want a chance to share their story in the hopes of inspiring someone else in the hopes of highlighting some tools or resources they used that someone might find helpful, in the hopes of pointing someone away from a particular kind of therapy that really was not useful for them. Um,
Right.
People who are afraid to talk to their friends and family face to face, but they'll come record a podcast and
Mhm.
then say, "Hey, Aunt Sue, hey, everybody, um, I can't talk about this in person, but
Right.
here's a link to a podcast where I lay it all out.
Yeah.
So that it be a safe place for anybody who's dealing with the the lingering impact of whatever it is that happened to them.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, like authors and experts in the field.
Yeah.
Um, I'm currently in love with a book called What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing by Bruce D. Perry, who's a PhD MD, and
Mm.
Oprah Winfrey. And the two of them together narrate their audiobook.
Ooh.
And it's amazing. I've shared this book with family members. I've been talking about it for weeks. I'm only
That's
about
going
halfway
on my
through,
Audible.
but it's like, one of these days, I'd
Yeah.
love to have Dr. Perry and Oprah on the show and have a
Mm.
conversation about the work they're doing to help people find their way through trauma on
Yeah.
Oprah's got a global platform.
Yeah.
I'm here with a first episode of a podcast that I intend to grow in reach and scope beyond where I can imagine. So
Mm.
it's an exploration of what do I need to continue my journey? What can I offer to support someone else's journey? And what the heck is out there
Yeah.
that might make a difference for all of us that we just haven't bumped into yet?
Right. Well, and what comes up for me with thinking about that is just there's a lot of opportunity there for listeners to then even participate in the, hey, I've been researching this, could you do an episode about this, right? This really could be a collaborative process where a listener who's hearing something or dealing with something on their own, or they've found a really helpful therapy style or healing practice or whatever it could be. Because I know for me, what has been powerful for me in the last year is I've been working with a breath worker.
Mm,
He's trauma informed. He's a counselor is his background, but he's also a trained breath worker. And I'm like, "Oh, I want to introduce you to my friend Steven, like, oh my gosh, you guys should talk." So I think there's this amazing opportunity for your community um to be able to, ask for episodes. Oh,
yeah,
because I think also the benefit from that is people learning how to ask for what you want. Because my common experience with those of us who've been through trauma is we have a lot of trouble asking for what we want sometimes. And so being able to say, "Hey, could you do an episode around this?" could be really powerful for people to be able to participate in the process.
yeah,
Ooh,
yeah,
love it. I love that.
yeah. And I've
So,
got room for everything from like the woo woo to the medication.
yeah.
Like I take the meds I take now, and
Mhm.
they work for me so far. But I remember watching my dad's mental health medication journey and what it did to him, what it did to us kids, what it did to the rest of the family, cycling through diagnoses and trying to find medications that worked. Those conversations are valuable for people who are delving into getting medicated and what can you expect or what happened, the what happened over here on that note,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm just a guy who's going through it. I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have the training and the degrees to tell people how to do their work. But I do
Yeah.
think that sharing our experiences and doing the work together
Yeah.
makes us stronger and helps keep us um, focused on the light at the end of the tunnel when we're backsliding,
Mm.
because we're
Yeah.
going to backslide.
Yeah. And I think the important piece there is knowing that there's a community there to support,
Yeah.
right? And I know that when I've had conversations with people who were having their own struggles for whatever reason, right? When I've reached out and said, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing?" They're like, "You're so busy. Why are you reaching out to me?" "'Cause you said you were struggling." That's what I'm here for. That's why we're friends, right? And having a group of people who are willing to um be a part of the light,
Yeah.
right? Because one thing that I think you'll find is that as the host of this, that even when you feel like you're having your darkest moments, the show could become the opportunity to take that dark time and shine a light.
Yeah.
And even if that light is just for you and one other person finds it brightening their world too,
Yeah.
is powerful. So speaking to that, who are the people that you think are going to get the most benefit from following the show?
Yeah. Gosh, my hope, I hope veterans find this show and
Mhm.
um, lean further into their healing.
Yeah.
Um, I hope that family members who are recognizing the impact of generational trauma
Mm.
find this show and begin to pick apart the things that are theirs, the things that belong to other people, kind of offloading the burden of shame and responsibility that they've laid upon their parents, upon themselves, upon whoever, upon the abuser, maybe even. There's so much freedom on the other side of trauma work.
Mm.
And for anyone who's dealing with really looking at the the extended impact, there's immediate recovery, and this isn't that place. This isn't I just got held up at gunpoint a week ago and I'm trying to get myself together. This is not that. This
Mhm.
is the how come I still break into a sweat every time I go into a gas station 20 years later?
Yeah.
I'm fine. I don't even think about that. But my body is what the hell?
Yeah.
And it's that dealing with the lingering impact that I'm I'm interested in. I've been back from my war zone deployment for a little over 20 years, and it's the
Yeah.
first time I've leaned into professional therapy and medication to deal with the impact of all that mess. Um, and the more I learn, the more I see little bits of impact all over the place that I thought that was just me.
Mm.
And the more ready I am to, I'm hardwired for disappointment. I don't want to be a disappointment. I am a disappointment. Anything less than perfection is less than what others expect from me or what I expect from myself. So I'm, uh, by default, I'm wired to be not good enough.
Mm,
And um, there is no good enough in trauma work. There's no good enough in dealing with your own personal shadow. There's just embracing it and doing the work. And whatever I can get to today is what I can get to today. So for people who are looking at what's inside of them still, um, I want this to be a safe place to do that exploration.
yeah. And I think that's good. I think the nice thing is people are going to hear things on the show that they might never hear because the person they're working with, the professional they're working with, wasn't trained on certain questioning techniques or digging techniques or reframing techniques, right? So they're going to hear new things that will help them in different ways. So this can be an adjunct to the work they're already doing. So I think that's incredibly
Yeah.
powerful. Incredibly powerful. So I love that you distinguished the difference between the person who just experienced the trauma and they're really still in it versus people who've been doing it for a while and they're just now coming to realize, you know, the thing that happened 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 40 years ago
Yeah.
is still coming up for them. I think that's a really powerful piece.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, wait, what is this trauma doing all the way over here in the middle of that thing? That's crazy. Why? Like, what? How
Right.
do I? And not knowing what to do about it
Mhm.
because it associates like it's insane.
Yeah.
You never know when that drunk uncle's going to come crashing through the front door, wondering when the party starts. Like, that trauma is just the worst party crasher, and it makes no sense sometimes. And
Yeah.
so when we start to recognize shit, the trauma just bombed all over that thing.
Mhm.
What the hell? That's where I find myself. And
Yeah.
that's where I'm out to shine some light.
Yeah. And I really love getting to see this happen with you, right? Because when you and I first met, it was a very business oriented conversation, and we
Mm.
just happened to click really well. And to be able to see what you have come through with all of this and knowing this journey is very much a roller coaster. You know, there's ups and downs and loop de loops and, you know, sometimes you're on a roller coaster in a train, sometimes you're in the kind of roller coaster where your feet are dangling down. Like the roller coaster changes, right? So with all of this, what has been the hardest part of the whole journey of moving from, okay, here's all these traumas, here's all this stuff that's going on. I'm working through it now. I'm going to do a podcast. In all of this, what's the hardest part for you?
Um, Getting started
Mm.
each day, like when it's time to sit down and do my therapy assignment, when it's time to hop on Zoom and record my first episode. Like, it's the um taking the first step of the day
Yeah.
into this journey is the hardest part for me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm asking this with what I believe, knowing what the answer might be. Once you have the first step done, is the second step easier, the third step easier,
Um,
or do they all feel like slogs, or is it, different day, different reactions?
the first step is akin to the terror of stepping through the front door of the gym. And after the first step is like getting swept away on the river with an inner tube and a cooler of beer.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, I'm just an outpouring of it's like, oh, I forgot that this was intimidating and scary and personal and vulnerable. And oh gosh, I don't even remember what I said for the last 40 minutes or so. Like, I hope I won't regret it, but it was honest, so I'm gonna let it be. There's a it just um after that first step, it's like rolling downhill and it's as easy as breathing for me
Yeah.
to
Right.
share where I am and what I'm up against. And it's not that easy for some people.
Mhm.
And perhaps that's what they're here for.
Yeah.
Listeners come in all shapes and sizes from all walks of life with different experiences and different challenges and this is this is me and this is what I have to offer.
Yeah. Well, and I think the nice thing is that this will be an opportunity for people. I mean, if they found themselves here, my belief is this is because the universe believed that you were meant to hear this, right? And that's something that I regularly point out to my listeners on my show, which is, look, if you're listening to this right now, it's because the universe believed. And everybody calls universe something different. I call it the universe, right? The universe wanted you to hear this, right? So if the universe wanted people to hear this, the first episode, my guess is the universe, and they made it this far, 40 something minutes in, then maybe, just maybe, they should listen to episode 2 and 3 and 4. So, um, Brian, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I know that being open and vulnerable and putting this out there can be scary, but I think you're right. It's absolutely going to shine a light, and you'll find that by sharing it, your burden has become lighter each and every time
Mm,
you put out an episode.
cool.
I think that's so exciting for you. So I'm going to let you wrap things up here because, it's about that time.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this, Jenny.
Mm.
Um, if if what you heard here spoke to you and you want some more of it, you can find me on Substack where I write in addition to podcast at Traces of Trauma, or you can search Brian Arbor. Traces of Trauma is going to be showing up on Facebook and Blue Sky and Instagram and all the lovely social media places soon. So feel free to tune in on whatever platform feels best for you. And I look forward to a future of sharing those traces of trauma together.